Hello, welcome to another series based on another One Piece power in the barrier fruit. This gets a whole video dedicated to it because Bartolomeo is funny as hell, and I genuinely think his barriers could have been used way better, almost like an infinity from DJK. Anyways, let me cook on this one. Enough said, enjoy. Deku grows up in the normal primary school. At age 5, he grows up following Bakugo and his friends around, marching through the playground and around the sandpits as the Bakugo Hero Agency. Everyone was seemingly drawn to Bakugo because of his quirk. Deku, although his age was 5, had never developed the quirk himself. His mum never took him to the doctors because he never showed signs, and due to this, his real quirk would stay hidden. One day, Bakugo, his friends, and Deku on the end would be walking through a forest of sorts, marching in a line to the tune of Bakugo's horn. Deku followed behind with a bug net in his hand as they approached a log over a river. They walk over it, Bakugo as confident as ever. From the front, Bakugo would slip and fall off the side. Deku, seeing his feet come off, would instinctively slam his right foot down and for some reason cross his fingers on his right hand. A small barrier about 1 by 1 meter would form below Bakugo, him falling onto it and bouncing a little bit before stopping. Everyone's shocked, looking around for the pro who saved him, and seeing Deku making a strange hand sign. They asked what happened, and Deku, confused, asked if he did that. His quirk must have unlocked. Deku personally rushes home, leaving the others there as he goes to tell his mum the good news. Back at the log, Bakugo, even as a kid, is seething. He didn't need saving, and from a lame quirk like that, no less. From here, Bakugo hated Deku, finding a way to be a hater somehow. Class returned as normal the next day, Deku coming to school and declaring he unlocked his quirk, doing the same activation, stomping his foot and crossing his fingers when a small green ball of energy pops up in front of him. The class looks at it, touching it and feeling cold. They all admire it until from the back someone speaks up. Bakugo. Pfft, this is all that stupid wall. Sorry. All it is a stupid wall. What? What are you gonna do? Sit behind me while I do the damn fighting, Deku? The class says this and kinda laughs with him. I mean, he had a point. All it was a stupid wall. What could he really do with it? Deku, feeling hurt by this, would separate himself from Bakugo and his Goonies, his hatred for them building over the years. At age 10, until age 10, where Bakugo decided he wanted to prove how bad Deku's quirk was. He challenged Deku to a 1v1, quirk versus quirk, to finally show once and for all that Deku's quirk was useless. They ready up, Deku insanely nervous and shaking as Bakugo rockets in, his quirk having grown since they were kids. Deku puts his barrier up, but Bakugo dodges, swerving around it and as Deku closes his eyes and braces for impact. He's exploded square on the chest right above his left pec. This would sear as Bakugo explodes it more, Deku being left with a permanent scar before passing out from the pain. He wakes up once more in a hospital bed, Inko sitting over him as they explain what happened to him. Deku looking down and seeing a huge gash from the fight. He was pissed. He wanted to get back at Bakugo, but he was stopped by Inko. She understood, but not like this. Deku agreed, sitting down and thinking. He needed to get stronger. Show everyone his quirk is more than just a defensive quirk. More than just a wall. He would change class, moving to a class with another quirkless kid, who got picked on instead of Deku. From the age of 10 to 14, Deku trained in secret, mastering his quirk and unlocking some kind of aspect he never thought was possible. He was ready. Unlike all these others, Deku also trained physically too, getting way earlier start than in canon. The final years of middle school class was once more changed. Deku, both classes merging into one, and Bakugo and Deku would be reunited once more. Deku stays calm, getting ready for his first day as he walked through the door, opening the door and seeing a pre-ready Bakugo. Look who came crawling back. Took you 4 years, Deku. His Goonies laugh. Bakugo keeps going, hurling insults after insults. Never being humbled in his life, Bakugo's head would be through the roof. Deku didn't even react, staying calm and collected as Bakugo yapped in his ear like a little dog, only stopping when the teacher came in. This continued for weeks, Deku trying to ignore it until one day Bakugo challenged him outright. Deku finally looked at him, putting on a scared face and pretending to decline. The class laughed at him as Bakugo plotted. He was getting a fight if he wanted it or not. The bell would ring and Bakugo pounced, waiting outside for Deku to step out. Deku, seeing this, deliberately falls into their trap, getting pulled outside by his goonies before Bakugo challenged him once more. A big crowd surround them, Bakugo flaunting his quirk in front of the class as he cheered, Bakugo looking around to take in the applause. Deku cracked a small grin before Deku crossed his fingers on his right hand and slammed his foot into the floor. "You're open!" A barrier erupts from the floor below him, Deku flicking his fingers up as it droves upward, slamming into Bakugo and shooting him into the sky. Bakugo flailed midair, confused on what happened. Before he can even react, Deku crosses the fingers on his left hand, a wall being created above Bakugo, who slams into it, the wall not even cracking as Deku points his hands down. The wall drives Bakugo into the floor like a hammer hitting a nail. Bakugo slammed down face first into the floor, Deku uncrossing his fingers and sliding his foot back. He walked slowly towards Bakugo, who was on the floor. The class looked on silently as he approached. "You've been barking all these years, so I figured build you a little cage." Crossing his fingers on both hands as three wheels surround Bakugo in an instant, airtight and humming with pressure. Bakugo woke up, looking around him and seeing the green tinge of Deku's walls, now made translucent. He ran at the walls, but they didn't budge, throwing an explosion after explosion. Deku stood there like a kid in the zoo. "And I didn't even hit you." The crowd stays silent. To them, Bakugo was unbeatable, the next All Might. Deku walked past him, not even sparing him another glance as he walked back inside, calling his mum. He wanted to change schools. His mum was confused. He'd been so good for the last years, what happened? She then hears the yelling of Bakugo in the background, still ready for a fight, and she agrees. Deku walking out of that school there and then as his eyes never see Bakugo again. Well, hoping to never see Bakugo again. The switch takes time, but after a month, Deku is placed into another school. The school with Kirishima and Mina. He actually becomes quick friends with Kirishima. His quirk being similar to Deku's would kinda unite the two. This goes for the rest of the school year. Deku and Kirishima growing close as Deku tells him stories of the old school and his fight with Bakugo. Kirishima thinks it's cool, looking up to Deku. The final day comes and they do their career aptitude test with no sludge villain attack. Instead, Kirishima and Deku talk on the phone about how they're going to train for UA, deciding to train together on a beach and try and clean it up. They agree and meet on Dagobah Beach together on the first day of the 10 months training. Training together was the right choice. Kirishima getting to train his quirk on Deku's unbreakable force fields, and Deku getting to use his quirk on someone who's fighting him, helping him to react better and allowing for him to experiment on some offensive moves. Because, Kirishima can take it. This goes on for a whole 10 months, them cleaning the beach a little too, but not the whole beach, just like a half or so. They arrive at the UA gates with a glimmer in their eyes. They were ready. Walking in and completing their theory exam, barely passing. Like Loki, Kirishima ain't the smartest. Then there was the prac. Deku and Kirishima being put in separate ones, much like in canon. Deku sits at the front of his group. It was a robot exam. How was he going to do this? This was a perfect chance for him to test out some of his new moves he could do with Kirishima. With a grin on his face, the door opens and Deku doesn't even listen, rushing right out before anyone says anything. The rest of the group are kinda mad at him before Present Mike backs him up. Deku already about 100 meters ahead with a slam his foot down and cross both fingers on both hands. Two walls spawning in and crushing a three-pointer like it was a bug between two magnets. This continued, Deku Loki crushing them with one or two walls, or would show off a little bit of building, like building a staircase for him to walk on, and riding down the walls, or him surrounding them in a bubble force field and flicking them into other robots. Kinda like a pinwheel machine. Either way, Deku gets points, sitting on at least 70 points. This is until the 0-pointer comes. Deku, just kinda chillin', would start running away. It was worth 0 points anyway. Why would he bother? This is until he hears a voice calling for help. He looks back. Someone was waving him down under a huge rock on the path of the 0-pointer. Deku, thinking quick, would rush in, trying desperately to lift the rock up for her, but being unable to. Not good. The robot quickly approached. Could his force fields block this much weight? In his eyes, they were unstoppable, but against this, Deku doubled down. If he had believed they were strong enough, they would be. He pushed on, slamming his foot down and crossing his fingers as the robot swings a fist right at them. Nezu and the teachers watch on as they both seemingly got flattened beneath it. Some teachers freak out, like All Might, but Nezu, curious about the abilities, would just sit back and watch. The dust clears, and they were nowhere to be seen. The teachers properly freak out. Did they just watch two kids kill themselves right in front of them? They rush down as Nezu backs up the robot remotely. The robot moves back as the exam finishes and he's finally seen. People astounded, looking at the 0-pointer's hand, completely busted a huge chunk of it, missing. Compressed into itself after landing a punch on the immovable object. Deku and Uraraka are standing there completely untouched. The fist had hit them, but the field went right through it. Now, Deku had his answer. If he really wants to, his shield is indestructible. He lets it down and they ask what happened. Deku explaining before pointing at the robot's hand. The teachers are impressed, Nezu especially, awarding him 50 hero points as well. His final score coming out to 120 points, completely smashing Bakugou. Deku walks back home, no interruptions from anyone, just walking back and sitting down, talking to Inko and saying he's pretty confident. He waits a couple of weeks before his letter finally comes. He's welcomed to UA and welcomed by All Might himself as the #1 point getter. Deku's hype about this. He didn't think he scored that many, let alone #1. This was nuts. He can only assume that meant he beat Bakugou. He shows his mum and they celebrate by going shopping and buying him everything they need before shipping him off to UA. The first day of UA arrives, Deku chilling in his seat, scrolling on his phone, being one of the first people there. This is until a familiar face walks through the door. Bakugou. He stared Deku down, explosions going off in his palms, ready to lunge. Before his explosions stop, he looks down. What the hell? From the front, Aizawa stands up. Sit down and shut up. There's no quirk usage inside, dumbass. Bakugou sits down and Aizawa introduces himself as their homeroom teacher. But before they can do anything else, they're told to meet him outside for a first day test. Sorry. Deku makes his way outside, talking to some of the kids like Kirishima and Mina. Glad they both got in. He's then thrown the ball, looking at it confused before Aizawa explains the test. They're testing their quirk usage. Deku's told to throw it, and he thinks for a second. How could he make this go further? He thinks back to when he was a kid, saving Bakugou from falling, his shield bouncy and malleable. Deku crossed his fingers on his right hand and stomped his foot, throwing the ball into the sky. As he throws it, he crosses his left hand, one barrier appearing right above it, and another appearing right below it. The ball slams into the one above it, the barrier stretching like rubber before shooting it into the other barrier. It slams into the middle of the other barrier, stretching back once more before shooting off into the distance. Aizawa looks at the distance counter as it increases. 380 meters. Not bad, kid. Deku's surprised by how far he got. For a first idea, that wasn't too bad. Bakugou looks on. How the hell did he master his quirk this much? Was he always this strong? He puts his head down and at the back of the class, his hand curling into a ball, shaking with rage. They open again. Not yet. The rest of the tests go on. Deku Loki can't use his barriers during all of these. Well, at least not yet. So he does get 12th place. His body is much more built and he's much more confident than in canon. So no one gets expelled from this timeline either. Just because. From there, class will go on. Everyone's settling in, talking amongst themselves. Deku hanging around Kirishima and Mina a lot more. Them two hating Bakugou for what he did to Deku and telling him after he told them what happened when he was a kid. Giving him the stink eye every now and then. This is until one day everyone would be especially tense. Today was their first hero training. The good stuff. They sit in anticipation as someone unexpected rushes through the door. All Might. They all go nuts. It's All Might? He shuts them up and tells them to go outside before telling them about the exercise, revealing their costumes. Everyone gets them right on before meeting him at Ground Gamma. Deku's costume in this timeline is low-key the same as the Deku in canon, but when he was walking the streets like a bum, that costume is called, like, the first costume he had sucked. He ain't wearing that shit, let's be real. People checking out each other's costumes as All Might reads the rules, pulling names from a box and pairing people up to fight. Deku and Uraraka versus Ida and Bakugou. Bakugou stares daggers at Deku, his grin uncontrollable. Deku staring straight forward, seeing Bakugou in his peripherals. He thought he had already put him on a leash, but I guess not. From there on, he would think, walking with Uraraka quietly as he's in his own head. How could he humble Bakugo? Uraraka, finally sick of the silence, asks what's up. Deku explaining his beef with Bakugo and how he's about to humble him. Uraraka pitches in, saying he gives a mean vibe and that he does need to be humbled. From there, Deku and Uraraka walk in, nodding before splitting off. Deku rushing upstairs and trying to meet Bakugo halfway, his prayers being answered as he turns the corner, seeing Bakugo exploding down the hallway, salivating almost at the thought of fighting Deku. Deku looks right at him, eyes wild, still bubbling with rage from years past. Oh, how I've waited for this. He clocks his right fist back, his hand exploding as it shoots forward. Deku sits completely still, holding his hand low to his side and crossing his fingers on his right hand. Bakugo's punch slams into the wall, about an inch from his nose. Bakugo recoiling in pain as his gauntlet cracks. Bakugo snarls, cocking back both hands, spinning into a sweeping kick. But the same thing happens. Another wall blocks it, then another, and another. Every attack blocked like he's in a cube of mirrors. Deku stepping back and creating panels between each of them with a surgical precision. Bakugo can't even reach him. It's like he's been locked inside a puzzle made of glass. Deku speaks calmly. This is what you've become. You haven't changed at all. Bakugo roars, throwing a final explosion upward and breaking the ceiling. But Deku lifts his hand, crosses his fingers. Wham! A massive wall drops above and slams Bakugo down. Not enough to hurt, but just enough to make him kneel. Deku walks up to him. He doesn't even raise a hand. You know what the worst part about this is, Katsuki? Deku's voice is low, quiet. The class listening on from the monitors gets real still. You didn't even touch me. Bakugo glares up, seething. Deku turns around. I beat you 4 years ago. Seems you just didn't notice. With that, Deku begins to walk away, releasing his fingers on Bakugo and unpinning him from the floor. The class looks on in shock. What was Bakugo going to do? Bakugo stood completely still, staring at the floor as he left, gauntlet pulsating red. A drop of blood dropped to the floor in front of him. He looked up, completely silent, pulling his left hand up and pulling the pin. The speakers coming on for about half a second before the explosion hit, All Might screaming desperately, "No, don't do..." He's cut off, the explosions ripping through the floor, ceiling, and walls. Bakugo being slammed back, his left shoulder dislocating. He didn't care though. He looked up, watching as the dust cleared. Deku still walking straight ahead, walking up the staircase and rearing the third floor. Bakugo dumbfounded by this. Too many things his head to think about. Like an animal, he rushed at Deku, full speed running in his direction as he slams against a clear barrier. The same barrier that tanked his explosion. Once more, Bakugo is sat on the floor unconscious as his classmates stared in silence. Upstairs, Deku and Uraraka meet, going into the bomb room and facing Ida straight on. It's not even a challenge. Deku traps him in a bubble and Uraraka runs in and touches the bomb. All Might exclaims their victory as Bakugo is shipped to Recovery Girl. Deku low-key feeling a little bit bad after seeing the state he was in. All Might telling him he did the right thing though. Class continues from there, Bakugo not coming back for a day or two, his vibe being completely different afterwards, kinda sulking if anything. In his mind, Deku hadn't won, he just hid behind some stupid wall. His quirk was still superior. Deku low-key feeling the same, this time training alone for a week or so in his spare time, trying to implement his stretchy barriers as a way to strengthen his attack, like some trampoline, or like some spring-loaded type of action. Trying and trying all week, eventually getting there. But we'll hear more about that later. For now, Deku has one thing to go to, the USJ. They all load onto the bus and the normal conversation goes down. Who's the strongest? This time it's between Todoroki and Deku. Everyone wondering if ice could get into his barrier. No, it can't. They keep chatting until they finally get inside. As the class steps through the massive double doors of the USJ, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The dome facility loomed around them like something out of a theme park. Only, instead of roller coasters, it was sectioned off into disaster zones. Flood, fire, collapsing buildings, and a whole space for rescue ops. Everyone looked around in awe, some pointing at the flood zone, others whispering about the fake earthquake set. Deku, meanwhile, stood near the back, arms crossed, eyes scanning everything. This was supposed to be a rescue training exercise, but why did he feel so tense? Before long, 13 stepped forward and began her explanation, talking about the value of rescue work and how quirks aren't just meant for combat, and the importance of precision, control, and teamwork. She spoke like a teacher, calm and collected, although her dome helmet hid her emotion. Aizawa stood beside her, arms crossed, nodding occasionally. Deku didn't say anything, but his stomach twisted. His instincts felt off. He looked towards the center plaza, towards the fountain, just in time for the lights to dim slightly, and almost like a power outage. Some of the class muttered, looking up, then in the middle of the plaza, it appeared, swirling a black vortex of mist. It twisted like smoke, but moved with intention, growing wider and wider until a massive portal formed. Shigaraki, Korigiri, and over a dozen villains stepped through. Deku's eyes widenly. Deku's eyes widened immediately, his heart skipping. This wasn't part of the exercise. Oh, this ain't no drill, Kaminari muttered from the side. Someone else screamed. Karagiri raised his misty arms and began speaking. Welcome, students of UA. We hope you enjoy our little field trip. A second later, the mist split and shot forward like tendrils of smoke. Before anyone could react, it grabbed Deku by the chest and yanked him in. His eyes flared open as he vanished. Everyone was in chaos, students screaming. 13 shouted for them to stay together as the mist spread through the room like a fog-born blast. One by one, students were taken, but the scene shifted now to Deku, who was flung through the warp tunnel like he'd been tossed through a hose. He felt his stomach turn before slamming onto solid concrete. His boots scraped against the floor as he grabbed himself mid-fall, rolling up and standing up to see where he landed. The ruined city zone, rubble everywhere, collapsed buildings, smoke from simulated fires wafting through the air. He looked up. No one else was around. Damn it, he whispered, crossing his fingers out of reflex, a wall materializing briefly in front of him as a failsafe. This was a setup. From behind him, he heard a heavy crunch of stones, footsteps, several of them. A gang of villains emerged from the smoke, each one of them looking more dangerous than the last. Crowbars, sharp claws, and even a chainsaw. One lunged. Instantly, Deku stomped his hands and crossed his fingers. A panel slamming up like a shield, stopping any charge dead in its tracks. He twisted and kicked, a second barrier forming beneath one of the villains, flinging them into a window and shattering it like a catapult. Where did they even come from? He muttered, breathing heavy, forming a translucent dome around himself to give himself space to think. He couldn't stay here. He needed to get to the others. And then he saw it. Aizawa in the distance, closer to the plaza. Underground Hero was fighting like a demon, scarf whipping around, his quirk activating and deactivating with a split second timing, putting villains down left and right. But Deku could see something else, something bigger, something wrong. From the center of the plaza stepped a creature. No, a monster, a massive creature with its brain exposed, muscles like body armor, walking like a predator off the leash. The Nomu, and it was headed straight for Aizawa. Sorry. Deku's feet moved before he even thought. He sprinted through the ruined building, wall jumping off debris, making makeshift barriers as springboards, sliding through cracks in rubble, heading straight for the fight. As the Nomu reeled back a punch, ready to cave Aizawa's skull in, Deku screamed from the distance, slamming his foot down and crossing both hands. Boom. A massive shimmering wall erupted right between the Nomu and Aizawa, the monster's fist slamming into it with a sickening crack. The wall held. Aizawa blinked in shock, turning to see Deku skidding to a halt, dirt and blood on his uniform, teeth clenched. I've got you, sir, Deku shouted, reinforcing the wall with a second layer, then twisting his hand and forming two smaller panels on the left and right like braces. The Nomu reeled back and punched again, harder. The shield trembled, but it didn't break. Aizawa stepped back, giving Deku a nod with his scarf whipping around him like as he took down another incoming villain. The Nomu roared, frustrated, Shigaraki stepping forward and twitching like an animal. Who the hell is that? He hissed. The green-haired one. He's not on the records. He's stronger than expected, Korigiri muttered. That shield, it Must even rival reinforcement quirk. Oh, never mind, sorry. Shigaraki growled, then let Nomu handle him. The Nomu lunged, not at Aizawa, but this time at Deku. Deku crossed his fingers and slammed his foot down again, forming a staircase of barriers underneath his feet. Leaping up like he was running on air, he spun midair and formed a panel behind himself like a floating shield, bracing for impact as the Nomu jumped to meet him. They collided midair, Deku blocking the punch, but the force cracked him through the air like a thunderclap. He was launched backwards, slamming into two ruined pillars, coughing but still conscious. He stood, blood trickling from his lip, staring at the Nomu like it was puzzled he hadn't figured it out yet. I can't match his strength. Not directly, he muttered, crossing one set of fingers, then the other. So I won't. He stomped twice. One barrier formed under the Nomu's feet, lifting it. Another shot from the side, knocking it off balance. Then another appeared from above, hammering it down like a falling door. Whatever that means. The Nomu crashed to the floor, not only out, but stunned for a split second. Enough for Deku to charge forward, slamming a panel under his foot and launching himself like a bullet, knee first into the Nomu's gut. It staggered. He landed, creating a cage of barriers around it. It flailed inside like a rat in a jar. Stay down. But the Nomu didn't. It flexed, muscles bulging. It shattered the cage in an instant. Deku's eyes widened. Of course it regenerates, he whispered, stepping back. This thing isn't just strong. It's built to kill All Might. Right on cue, a gust of wind slammed through the plaza. A blur of red, white, and gold arrived at the center stage. All Might landed like a meteor, cape blowing, eyes burning. I am here. Deku sighed with relief. He didn't lower his stance. He watched All Might and the Nomu stare each other down. You okay, young Midoriya? All Might called without looking. Better now, Deku grinned, dragging a thumb across his lip, limping a little bit, and clapping. The clap of air pressure doing some internal damage. All Might smiled at Deku before his eyes locked onto the Nomu. Deku sat down, Aizawa picking him up and bringing him up the stairs, cancelling the Nomu's quirk in the meantime. From above, All Might jumped, slamming down in front of the quirkless Nomu and dispatching it easily. Deku watched on. Nothing could rival that strength, blinking in and out of unconsciousness, before finally going to sleep. He wakes up in the nurse's office, asking what happened, and getting a rundown version. Deku overused his quirk for 1 and had internal damage for 2. He's lucky he didn't sustain any more damage, or he could have been hurt. Deku thanks the nurse before walking out of his mum's car. Then, them chatting on their way home before chilling and watching a movie together. The sports festival, the pinnacle of every first year's shot at stardom. The stage where future heroes are made and reputations are absolutely shattered. And this time, it was Deku's turn to step in the spotlight. After the chaos of the USJ, the media was all over Class 1A, calling them the trauma class, or the next generation, depending on which station you were watching. While the other students might have been nervous, biting their nails, or shaking in their support gear, Deku was chilling, legs crossed, eyes half-lid, sitting on the bench like it was just another Tuesday. His mind wasn't racing with doubt, it was focused, centered. Because for once, this wasn't about Bakugo, or proving he wasn't useless. It was about him, Zuko Midoriya, and what he could do with this dumbass fruit ball power that everyone used to laugh at. They step out onto the track. Midnight calls for silence, spinning the wheel and calling for the start of the first challenge, the obstacle course. Deku doesn't take the lead, not immediately. This was never his plan. Instead, he let Todoroki and Bakugo charge ahead, lets the mines go off, lets people elbow each other in a mad rush of quirks and chaos. Meanwhile, he moves smart, calculated, barriers under his feet like stepping stones, forming one after the other midair so he doesn't touch the ground at all. He literally floats through the chaos, bouncing on the platforms like it's Mario Galaxy. A robot tries to grab him, boom, barrier to the neck. Narrow bridge over a canyon, he doesn't even touch it. He straight up walks on a curved barrier track like a monorail made of glass. By the time they're at the minefield, he's in the middle of the pack. Todoroki and Bakugo are still fighting it out ahead, trying to prove whose dad is cooler. Sorry, what the fuck? Why the hell did I put that in? Sorry, my bad. and Deku just takes a deep breath, slamming his foot down and launching himself onto one of the mines using a trampoline-style wall beneath it, shooting past like a damn cannonball. 4th place. He didn't win, but he didn't need to. He made it look easy, casual, and more importantly, he saved the good stuff for later. Then came the cavalry battle, which I'm going to skip. Then the real games begun. The 1v1 tournament. This is where Deku shines. This is where he finally shows that his quirk, yeah, it's not just for defense. It's not just hiding behind walls. It's a weapon. And today he's going to prove it. Round 1. He steps up against some speed type from the general studies. The kid rushes in, zigzagging like a bullet, thinking he can outpace Deku's reaction. Big mistake. Deku stomps, crossing his fingers and slamming a wall. An elastic panel forms behind him, timed just right so when he throws a punch forward, the recoil kicks off the back panel like a springboard, launching his fist forward with double the force. The punch doesn't even land. The air pressure alone knocks the kid out cold. Everyone watching goes wild. Was that just a punch? Isaiah squints. No, he rebounded the force. He's weaponizing the barriers. All Might smiles. He's improving faster than I expected. Round 2. He fights the steel guy with the steel hardening quirk. I forgot his name. Him trying to tank Deku head on. Dumb move. Deku steps in closer than he should, like he's about to get decked. Then, mid-swing, he forms a mini shield on his knuckles, concentrating and pointing like knuckle duster made out of pure energy. He jabs once, twice, and the third one sends the guy flying out of bounds. That's the trick. He's not throwing full body haymakers, just flicking, using the panels like pistons, like a slingshot, short, sharp, and burst with insane output. He's turned the defense into a striker's dream. Semis, he finally gets Todoroki. Ice to the left and fire to the right. Pressure off the charts. Everyone holding their breath, but Deku, he doesn't flinch. He walks forward through the snowstorm like a breeze, panels deflecting every shard of ice, turning the terrain into a checkerboard of bouncer pads and angle blocks. Todoroki lights up the field with flames, but the heat just warps harmlessly around Deku's dome. Eventually, Deku makes it to the center stage, spins midair and forms a bunch of panels under his feet. Begins slamming a kick right into Todoroki's gut again. Not the leg doing the work, but the recoil panels behind it, like a shotgun kick. Todoroki coughs up air and collapses, the crowd losing it. Even Endeavor is stunned. Deku beating the fire and ice quirk with basically an invisible trampoline and a pair of cross fingers. The finals is Bakugo. But you already know how that goes. Deku straight away not even messing around, pushing Bakugo right out of bounds, slamming him with an invisible barrier from the front and above to make sure he touches the floor. From there, class is buzzed, Deku trending all over the internet for his quirk's usage, and surprisingly, simple quirk being taken to the extremes where he could even beat Endeavor's son. Everyone wanted Deku to train, Deku looking at his stack of internships before picking one. Not even he would have expected. Miyako. Her seeing the way he could use his quirk gave her ideas. He could be the perfect training partner. He accepts and they take a train to her place, looking around before meeting her. They talk for a minute, Deku explaining his quirk in detail. Miyako's excited to hear this. His quirk can tank that much damage? They begin training right away. Deku training his reaction time and countering attacks while using his shield, and Miyako training on her endurance and power, punching and kicking borderline unbreakable walls. This goes on for days. Deku and Miyako just constantly training the whole time. Through this, both of them get crazy strong. Deku being able to summon. This goes on for days. Deku and Miyako just constantly training the whole time. Though this time they get both strong. Deku being able to summon his shields without slamming his foot down or crossing his fingers now, and Miyako being even stronger than in canon. This goes on until they receive the news of his classmates passing. Ida had gone out for revenge and got stabbed by Stain, dying in the alleyway in Hosu as they trained. Deku can't believe it at first. How could this even happen? But then reality sets in. Him getting advice from Miyako and being sent back to UA. They mourn for a little bit before the class would once again return to normal. Well, about as normal as it could be after that. They then thrusted again into another big event, this time it being the final exams. Deku's low-key nervous about this, and he needed to study more. Who knows what they could pull?
For a week or so after, he continues to train like he did with Mirko, consistently spamming barriers, sharpening them into new things like Green Lantern. This goes on until the final day of the exams come. I said I was going to do the prac portion in the last part. I'm going to be real, I'm not. Deku would probably just make a barrier around himself and, walk right through it anyway. So anyways, they hop onto the bus leading to the final camp. Deku reading a nice little book, actually as they go. People chatting around him. Deku picks up on some of the conversations, but never interjects. This would be until Aizawa tells everyone to hop off. Everyone confused does so, walking out the door of the bus, looking over the mountainous regions in front of them. Deku puts the book down, taking a look, seeing a little building in the distance, barely noticeable. He squints, looking at it before Aizawa. Aizawa met his gaze and grinned. One of the cats putting her hand on the floor and pushing them right off the edge with her dirt quirk. Everyone screams until Deku puts a barrier below them with a big enough one to stop their falling. They slowly go down like a big elevator and reach the bottom. Deku points them to the direction of the camp. I kinda figured this would happen. It's over this direction. They all nod and start running as fast as they can, the ground's shaking as the monsters pour from the forest to attack them. Deku crosses his fingers and surrounds the entire class in a huge field. People looking around and Deku complaining, and Bakugo complaining, though he learns to be a good little boy and stay put. They make their way to the training grounds and his entire way, the entire way. Like, even if Aizawa was told about it by the cats, there's no way they could break it, and there's no way she's breaking it. They make it to the camp, eating and having fun as Deku's pulled aside. They reprimand him for cheating in the class, in the forest, and due to this, he's sent to do an all-out cleaning for the class. They have a swim as he does this. The first day would arrive, them doing some training with Class 1B, Deku working on making stranger and more complex shapes for offensive and defensive works. Unbreakable cuffs, big hammers, etc. He's turning into a little Green Lantern. This continues for both days actually, Deku also fighting Aizawa from time to time, as this goes on until the third and final day. Now, Deku and the other class are set up to do a haunted forest walk, and the other class is in their positions already, and Class 1A is about to go in. Deku was paired up last, so he goes in alone, looking around and see a small bit of smoke. Confused, he lifts himself above the tree line, seeing someone floating there with things sticking from his mouth. Deku, confused, goes back down before rushing to the teachers. He tells them something's up before rushing right back to the same spot, gliding over the trees before a man notices him. Blade shooting right towards Deku and curving with every bounce. Deku puts a barrier out, rushing forward as he gets in close. The blades ricochet off the barrier, slamming into the trees and more trees. Deku pulls more. Deku pulls more forward, the villain mumbling to himself about flesh and blood. Deku's grossed out by this and would decide to end it, making a barrier around him, his blades snapping right away as Deku picks him up, juggling him a little bit before slamming him against the floor 2 or 3 times just to make sure. He thinks for a second, looking over the villain. There's gotta be more. It's just not him. Before it hits him. Koda. I kind of forgot to go on the Koda backstory, so let's just say Deku met him while he was doing dishes on night 1. They had a little chat, and Koda letting it slip, and conversation he eats on the mountaintop. Deku right away looks in that direction, rushing over full speed, putting 2 barriers on his feet and legitimately flying. Full speed. He sees Koda sitting there and eating as a huge man in a cloak lingers behind him, smile on face, hand clenched and about to hit. Deku put his hand out as a barrier appears on Koda, muscular slamming his fist down and meeting the barrier would straight away break his arm. Looking at it, wincing in pain before looking around, almost going feral, slamming his body weight, kicking and thrashing the barrier trying to get at Koda. Deku finally making it there would see the man. All these guys were sickos, trying to kill a kid, and this desperately? Deku looks at the man he just thrashed about, shaking his head and closing his fist. A second barrier slamming skin tight on muscular like an armor suit, trapping him into a single position as Deku walks in closer. He begins talking to Muscular, trying to get into his head, before he hears an explosion behind him, followed by an ice wall. Distracted, Deku decides to end it once more, grabbing Muscular and slamming him into the floor in the still armor. Using him like a nail and his other barrier like a hammer, slamming him deep underground and releasing his grip. Muscular stuck about 30 meters underground, screaming frantically as Deku grabs Koda and dips. Making his way to where the explosion came from, he looks around. A little blood on the floor, a trail of ice leading out to the forest, and then nothing. He meets with Todoroki. He looks distraught. They got him. They got Bakugo. Bakugo, they got Bakugo. Deku's eyes widen. Bakugo. They captured Bakugo? What do you mean? He's frantic, rushing around the place. He finds the teachers, asking if they've seen him. Nothing. They search the area, but all the villains have left, along with Bakugo. Deku takes this bad, going into a depression. If he wasn't so busy playing whack-a-mole, he could have saved Bakugo. This is his fault. He sits completely motionless on the bus ride home, getting to his house and laying face down on the bed. Inko comes into his room, seeing the way he's reacted after hearing the news. She knocks and begins talking. Sweetie, I know this is hard for you. This shouldn't have to happen to anyone. Deku rolls over, facing the wall as Inko begins to close the door. It's about to close before she stops herself, taking a deep breath in and opening it wide once more. I know how strong you are. For this one time, I'll push my feelings aside. You shouldn't have to sit there in the dark as someone you know gets offed somewhere doing God's no... sit here in the dark as someone you know is off somewhere doing God's knows what. Deku turns to face her, the lights in the kitchen hurting his eyes a little bit. Your teachers are about to talk about what happened on the news right now. Come with me. Deku gets up and goes to the kitchen, seeing a broadcast with Aizawa and the UA faculty in suits on the news. Deku's eyes go wide, looking at the screen in the bottom right, seeing the raid on Kamino Ward happening right now. He sees the location card for half a second and starts booking it, rushing right out of his house and flying, not caring about public quirk usage, right to where Bakugo was. He flies and flies for about 5 minutes, hearing huge explosions in the distance as he finally makes it there, hiding on the rooftop and looking down. A man looking at his hand floats there as people begin to appear from nowhere, sludge coming from their mouths. He watches on, Bakugo coming on too, looking around into a defensive stance. Deku then hears a thundering footstep coming from the left, turning his head as All Might rushes into action, slamming All For One with a punch and being caught, struggling for power to overtake him. Deku, watching this, is shocked. Who is this guy? How is he holding back All Might? The air becomes heavy as All Might is knocked back, All For One holding his hand out, expanding and twitching as he charges up an attack. Deku sees Bakugo still defenseless in the way of the explosion. He has to do something. Not even thinking, Deku holds out both hands, closing his eyes and focusing as hard as he could. 10 layered green walls surround All For One's hand and arm, stopping in the shoulder as they compress like they don't muscular. Bakugo and All Might look on in shock. What the? They're cut off. All For One can't react in time. The barriers compressing his arm down would release his stored quirks. A huge explosion going off. The barriers stretching and sticking to his arm as it blows outwards before slamming right back down again. Deku coughs a little blood, panting heavily. He'd never felt anything like that before. He looks down, looking on as All For One's arm is completely gone. All For One looks pissed, looking around the battlefield for who did it. All Might capitalizing would land the final blow, ending All For One for good. Before the rest can escape, Deku in a last-ditch effort surrounds them with barriers. They all slam on them, trying to get it as free as they're rounded up into one and taken into prison. That's pretty much it. Deku going from there to meet Miriko, hearing good things and introducing himself to Night Eye, who takes him on. They go for the overall... Oh my god, sorry. They go for the overhaul case and meet him like in canon down the alleyway. This time, Deku reacting right away, making a barrier on all of them and lifting Overhaul into the air. If he's in the air and he's in a barrier, like his quirk is completely void. They take Eri to the hospital and Overhaul to prison, raiding the base in the same afternoon and arresting them. All wraps. Hope you like this. The end was a little bit rushed, I'm going to be real, and I wanted to do something different. But I do have final exams for uni going on right now, and I'm kind of on a crunch. So please like, subscribe, and comment, and please check out my Spotify. It's only new. It's got legitimately everything on YouTube except for you can watch it with your screen off. Ooh. Hope you like this. I'm gonna go. Catch ya.